today I'm with the amazing Mel of the Addicts, as was.
Yeah,
And Addicts still exist,
still
but
exists. Yeah,
you
I
retired.
I retired.
You
Yeah, about
retired.
2010.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
so yeah,
So Mel Ellis and Mel Ellis, I'll give his full name.
yeah.
Mel Ellis and I have a very mixed history together,
Hmm.
because I drove for the Addicts and temporarily managed them while Geordie, their manager, was in Cyprus or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I managed to wreck their lives for a month or so, and then Mel, when I had my van firm, when I was scraping a living from vans, Mel first of all worked for me and then took it over.
Yeah, very
Uh,
fortunate.
did it work out
I
for you
did. Well, we're sitting in the,
in the results
in
bit?
his results
So,
of
well,
it.
how come
So here we go.
you managed to get a nice bungalow out of it,
Yeah,
and
bricks and mortar.
and,
Yeah.
I failed totally. That's
Well,
because you actually ran it as an official business
you
with VAT and everything.
you went on a different course. You had a different plan in life.
Anyway,
So
let's go
yeah,
back to the
yeah,
days with the band, the
yeah.
glory days.
Well, yeah, from Murray's side, the early days. Yeah, I mean, let's say we needed a driver, so John was always on hand to drive whatever jalopy we had, and usually was a jalopy because it needed work doing on. I remember we barely got out of Ipswich once, and something went kaput, and you had to be under the bonnet to get us going again. So that usually was.
Yes,
Was that?
I do remember getting a phone call from the police one night. You're actually driving yourselves at that time.
Mm,
And they said one of your vehicles has broken down on the A12, and
oh,
with several people in it and equipment and so forth. So I got Chris Connolly,
mm,
who was. And I will explain who Chris was. He's no longer with us, unfortunately, but
mm-hmm.
he was lead singer with Jip and Switch and a lot of Ipswich bands
Oh,
that
right,
were
yeah.
playing sort of Steely Dan stuff and all that sort of period stuff.
Mm,
So, but he also worked with me on the bands. In fact, the bands I think supported half the music community of
yeah.
Ipswich,
Yes, it did.
and
Yeah.
so. Chris went down in his Ford Transit, and I went down in my Bedford CF. And
Mm,
between us, we got all the equipment in and brought it back. So
yeah.
that was kind of early days. And Murrayside, we
Yeah.
won't just throw in Murrayside like a name.
No.
Murrayside was very important, the youth club and community centre.
Mm,
And there was an amazing character there called Paul Packwood,
mm.
who was
Oh, yeah.
a proper youth leader, and he and it had a garage up the back with a pit in, so everyone from the community on the estate could come and repair their cars there.
Mm,
But more importantly, he had sheds out the back where bands could keep their equipment. So
mm-hmm.
Addicts had one cage, and
Yeah.
Jar
Yeah.
Warrior had
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
And then we did a big. We did a
Yeah.
big music festival
Yeah.
out the back,
Festival. Yeah.
which was lovely. And uh, and the only reason that never happened again there was because although most of the state loved it, because the mothers would come up to me and sort of talk to them about their children and so forth,
Mm.
and how what a shame it was I wasn't on anymore. But one neighbour complained, and so we didn't get our music license for the next
Oh,
year.
dear.
And of course, the person behind that whole music push at Murrayside was a guy called Geordie, who managed the Addicts, and Geordie was the Pete and Kids, which was the lead guitarist and the drummer out of the Addicts' dad.
Father,
So
yeah.
this was pushing his sons, but he was in the RAF. And we had many adventures with Geordie.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
A character.
yes.
Yeah.
So were you with the Addicts because you weren't the first bass player with them, were you?
I was a guitarist. I was just a guitar, two guitars, because we never had a bass player then. And then we had must have been 5, as you do. And then I said, oh, I'll do it until we get another one. And then, because I stayed on it for
That's why. That's why I couldn't work out, because
Yeah.
I was thinking, I'm sure Mel was there forever, but then there were
Yeah.
other bass players. But of course,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
That
You
makes
were a
total
guitarist.
sense. Yes. Yeah, I prefer the guitar, but yeah, bass is fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Bass.
That was Lemmy's journey, wasn't it? He started out as a guitarist.
Yeah,
then
I
became
think
a bass
I think a lot of them maybe do. Yeah, sort of go from one
McCartney.
to the other. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, but that's
That's how it is. So
Yeah.
you were there for the for that first LP, which you recorded Octopus Studios.
Yeah, in Stow Upland.
Stow Upland. Octopus Studios was this beautiful studios in a barn, built into a barn, and there was a phenomenal engineer there, Tony, who was a phenomenal engineer, and in the end went to LA to sort of do big stuff.
Yeah, he was very very good. He was very knowledgeable, and yeah, he knew his stuff. That's for sure, and it helped us out for sure, because I say we took a day basically to whack it all down,
and you brought out that first LP yourself,
Songs of Praise, yeah, and that's it. So that was yeah, do it yourself punk as it was then.
So I was John the Van on the credits on
you
the
were
back.
John the Van, yeah, and there's pictures of you on the fanzine what went with it, but I don't have it at hand. But so you're all on there.
Really?
Oh yeah, I think they're all on the net.
So I exist.
Oh yeah, that's all there.
Ah,
yeah.
So then,
yeah.
I mean, well, there's the two memorable gigs. I mean, we drove to hundreds of gigs.
Oh
we?
yeah.
Were three memorable gigs. There was Murrayside had its own coach, so whenever the Addicts went out, all the punks from Ipswich, and we'd take the vans with us. This was Geordie's thing, getting the coach for Murrayside. So it was a Murrayside Community Centre coach, but it was a full single decker. And I remember we went to Hastings,
right,
and and all the equipment used to go in the side, like in the luggage compartment of the coach.
Yeah.
So we came out of Hastings, and there were some persons of an extreme right-wing persuasion waiting for us in the yard, and they had chased the one black guy that lived in Hastings at that point through the streets with machetes.
Right.
And then as we came out, I thought, well, this is very dodgy. So I lined all the punks up like a school crocodile, each with a piece of equipment in their hand, and so as a cool, everyone came out and put the equipment in the side of the coach. Everyone got on the coach, apart from Dog, who grabbed with microphone stands that used to have that big heavy bottom. And as the fascists got in their Ford Escort to drive out, the Dog and one other person were running down behind them, waving the microphone stands. They didn't catch them, but they did take out the back window of the Escort. So we literally drove the fascists out. And I suppose the other one where I got a good kicking was when we did the punky reggae thing at Westbourne School.
Oh, right.
In the hall there, and I'd taken 5 van loads of equipment down, Wii Warriors, and the sound system.
Right.
And I was exhausted, and I went down the back, and two people who actually looked like plainclothes policemen, because they didn't really look like punks or dreads, and they followed me down the corridor and knocked me over, and were about to give me a kicking when I shouted, for sake, someone help. And what they didn't know is we were backstage, and Big Dave came out, who was roadieing for us. It was a regular roadie. Came out with a bottle in his hand and chased these guys down the corridor. Meanwhile, this was another case of people getting in their car and running, because the whole hall full of punks and rastas ran out of the hall and chased this car down the road. So it was those moments. We had our moment, but it wasn't all like that.
Yeah, some Hell's Angels or some bikers. I seem to remember as well. I don't know if you were there, but I was under the trestle tables. I think I was. I weren't going to get involved in any of that luck.
Could you give us a quick rundown about the Addicts, please? Just tell us a little bit of the history of the Addicts.
Well,
you met John.
Yeah. I mean, to say I knew John. Oh well. Did I know you before? I can't remember. It was one of them things.
It was one of those. I was always part of that youth music scene.
Yeah, and as I say, with it really became sort of started with. I met Peter in a local pub, which is no longer there, and we said about sort of trying to start a band and the usual sort of thing, and we tried to try to find a singer. Tried one chap. He looked the part. He looked like Johnny Rotten, but he couldn't sing a note. And then we ended up with this sort of quiet sort of guy who his nickname Monkey. He couldn't sing that much better, but he had a bit more to him, and so
he was a great frontman, wasn't he?
He was a great frontman. So so we went with that, and as I say, Murrayside was very much sort of focal point of local bands, and we were lucky to have a room to rehearse, and so that's how that progressed. And as I say, we were lucky to get a gig in London, the Brecknock. Did you? I don't know if you went to that one.
Because I was reviewed in the Record Mirror there, because and that was another one where the National Front, because I did a couple of poems there, and they were up the back at the Brecknock. So they seem to get everywhere.
Yes, this is it. So and that was a lucky break, because that was where we met a chap from they had a record company called Dining Out, and that's where we did our first EP, Lunch with the Addicts. So and as I say, that progressed from there, and as I say, I after about 5 bass players left, I went on to the bass. So that's how we became a 4-piece, and sort of progressed from there. So and then also as the music, we decided early on, because all the punks wore black, we wanted something a bit more our own image. It wasn't an original idea; it had been done many times before, but we used the Clockwork Orange, the white bowler hats and the boots, and and as Monkey, he progressed with the facial thing, like the Joker and stuff. So it all progressed. It all sort of like progressed from there and moved on. So it became a more of a show sort of thing. So
you say you put out your own albums. How did that go? How did you get it distributed?
Yeah, well, we got a deal with
Cherry Red.
Cherry Red, yeah. Cherry Red signed us up for a distribution deal, and then and then we got signed to another record label.
It was a Warner Brothers one, wasn't it?
Well, that was later on. Yeah, we did a second album, Sound of Music, and then third, and so, and then we went to America, and that really sort of like took off, because the Californians really liked the image. This is probably about 83, 84, I think, that's sort of time, and then so that's probably where the major core fans were, So I mean, even people like Tony Hawk, who was the skateboard sort of, well, he's a god to some kids, sort of thing. He was knocking around with us when he was about 14, and so I mean, it's all in that sort of that time and that sort of thing.
But I remember, I mean, you had a huge fan base in Europe.
Yeah, as well as Europe as well.
You used to be
Yeah.
really high up on the indie charts in Europe,
Yeah.
in France and Germany. Because when I did the German tour with you, drove round, we had we had your second vehicle then. The first one was a long wheelbase CF,
Yeah.
and the second one was a long wheelbase transit. Because I remember changing the points and things on the autobahn with that. And I remember every time we played anywhere in Germany, the fans would come over from France.
Yeah,
there was people would, it was big news that you were doing.
That was a really big following in Europe, and as I say, we were lucky to play while the war was up, which was it had a different atmosphere, totally different.
Yeah, I remember that drive down through the corridor,
yeah.
and we couldn't go. One of our roadies. It was in the days of when you could get that visitor's passport for a £5, and one of our roadies only had that, but you couldn't go down the corridor with that. So I had to do front of stage. There was a metro in Berlin. The woman with the pet rat on her shoulder, the bouncer. And I remember this distinctly because I was at the front, and and of course the German punks used to have spikes about that size sitting out the jacket, and they'd dive, they'd belly flop from the front of the stage, and one was about to belly flop, and I noticed the monkeys, the lead singer's lead was round, his microphone lead was round his neck, so I ran across stage, got that, and he jumped and saved his life, probably. But the people at the front thought that me running across I was going to thump him, so they grabbed my legs and started about to pull me out into the audience. Now the woman with the pet rat saw me, so she held onto my hands, and so I'm getting longer and longer, and I'm trying to shout across, but of course, the punk band in full flow, and the guy doing it was Mick Bell, was it? Who looked after the guitars? It was, I forget. It was a guy who lived in Wolverston.
Oh well, yeah.
Tim.
Tim. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was. Yeah.
So he.
Tim.
He came. He eventually saw me and grabbed me and stood me up. And as I was stood up, someone thumped me on the nose, and I'm up the back of the stage nursing my nose, and all the punks at the front have realised that. That I wasn't about to thump their friend, but I was saving his life. So they're all going the German equivalent. All right, mate, no trouble. And then we did these manic drives, because I went and then I slept in across the equipment before I drove you, because you came straight out that gig, and then we went from Berlin back down the corridor to the Dutch coast. To a gig in Holland, and we'd do these huge long drives. I'd try and take a bit of a kit, but there was some fantastic stuff on that tour. There was, we did a couple with Tottenhausen, which are huge in Germany. They're still huge. And we played football. England versus Germany in Dusseldorf, and so we'd be in Park in Dusseldorf, England versus Germany, which is the Adicts versus Tottenhausen, and so it was there was, and all the car parks of the venues were full of broken glass. There was
some of the venues as well, especially around Berlin. Jesus,
but Berlin was a great city. West Berlin was a sort of very alternative town, because you could avoid national service in Germany if you had a Berlin address. And so there was that guy that came on between would play, that was sort of he was a satire really on that Aryan thing. He was long blonde hair, wasn't it? I forgot. He might have been Heinz. He called himself Heinz or something. I can't remember. Because he ran an alternative head shop in Berlin, which translated was the shit shop. This is for the
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but he wore this Alsatian badge and stuff, and it was very much taking the rise out of the whole nationalist stuff. And then Hamburg. What did we do now? We did the tour, the factory in Hamburg,
Yes.
which was another sort of legendary venue. And that was, but Hamburg was politically very
Yes.
interesting at that moment because the factory was run by left wing Hamburg, and another part of Hamburg would be so Hamburg was very split between left and right, and very much street politics. And then we did that weird squat down in Bielefeld, wasn't it, or something like that, in a tunnel. That had the longest squat. They'd had to move there because they'd been squatting somewhere else, and they'd had the longest squat in Europe till the German police came down and cleared them all, and it became sort of so that was it was historically an interesting time to have
that was to say the 80s was very politically changing, and everything else was
that whole DIY aesthetic of punk that came out about that time. You alluded to it earlier, but can you tell us a bit more about how that affected you and what it meant for you as an individual and as a band?
Well, as I say, it was the sort of anybody could do it. That was the realization that you didn't have to be, a brilliant musician to be in a band, because I certainly wasn't. I always sort of think myself as an enthusiastic amateur. I mean, just I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And just sort of think, well, let's just do it. And then, as I say, it was very much sort of like fanzines, was very big, weren't they, John? Sort of fanzines were like everywhere. That was another sort of, anybody could write. You didn't have to write for a major music.
No.
You
It was almost unhip to or uncool to be in anything else but a fancy. I remember the Northampton gig where I met Barry first, or Barry first saw me, and we didn't actually talk, but when that was with Crass, and that was John Peel Roadshow, and I went on between you doing the poetry. And the whole front row, because I had that poem that started, "You nice little man, you nice little punk, your head's on sideways and your mind's back to front, you're disgusting, you don't have trust." And I was pointing at the front row, and I was very much still hippie, and the long hair and long two-pronged ginger beard at that point. And the whole front row was throwing stuff at me and gobbing, and I thought, they hate me. And then and Crass, of course, given to being anarchists, and they wanted to show how anarchists they were. So when everyone got their ticket, they gave them a £1 note folded up inside it, which happened to be out of your door money, because you're on a percentage of door money. But that's was, but it looked good.
Yeah.
In fact, that we didn't make any money as a result. But after the gig, we went out into the yard, and this kid, and I'm thinking that everyone hates me, and this kid comes up, "Can I have an interview for my fanzine?"
This is it.
So it
fanzines, that was like our version of the internet, wasn't it? It's how you found out what was happening.
This is it. So everything was like, do it yourself. It was like T-shirts. Anything, wasn't it? I mean, as I say,
well,
anything
we ran one of the first
screen. Whatever they are.
Well, it was photocopied, wasn't it? Everything was photocopied.
Well,
No, it was through through a Gestetner, whatever.
And like say T-shirts and stuff. Everything was all homemade. Everything was do it yourself. And I say, that was the sort of spirit of the sort of how I got That's
and there's a few major record labels that grew out of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, one that grew out of actually touring with the Addicts, which was a young 12-year-old Lawrence Bell, who produced and sold the t-shirt, who took over the marketing side, the t-shirt, the merchandise side, and he travelled around everywhere with us, and now has created Domino Records, which is quite important in the current records situation. And but also we ran one of the few regular punk venues in Ipswich in the Manor Ballroom. So we'd bring people down, and so the punks would come over from as far away as Kings Lynn and stuff, because we were bringing bands like down from the north that hadn't played this far south. So, and it was very much, and I think that was part of the punk scenes. People booked each other. And it was the following. It was the one. If you put on a punk gig, you knew you were going to get a crowd, because people were very loyal to their bands and would turn up. So,
and to say, going back to the Murrayside thing, was very much a putting bands on every Friday, wasn't it? I mean, it was that say Paul Packwood was very much, you know, behind the whole spirit of the thing. You know, he was all for it. So that's why, you know, everything. Loads and loads of bands came out of that,
and you never had to fill in a form at all. You never had to, you know. It was just like you're going. You'd make a verbal booking, and you'd hand over pound notes. There was, there was very little bureaucratic control at that point.
It was just to play. You know, that was the whole thing, wasn't it? That was you know. So yes, and to say, it just went from there. So
so that was so we had an enormous history with the Addicts, and then of course I was trying to scrape a living as a poet, and I was supporting that by the bands, and so and at that point I had a van on permanent hire, and I started when life was at Christmas times and things. I'd get a second drive, I'd hire a second drive and third that van, and Mel started driving for me, didn't you, at that point? And then they gave me a job at Colchester Arts Centre as a manager of the bookshop at Colchester Arts Centre, so I had to give up the firm, and but I would go. So I passed the whole thing over to Mel, and at first I just go and organise the loads until he sorted out, and then Mel just turned it into something that worked.
Probably more my wife. Dawn is.
That'll be it.
I just drove. I had the easy bit. She organised everything. The brains.
Yeah, and they got rid of all my grotty contracts, the ones that would poison you. The barrels of sort of that roofing stuff.
My God!
I lost so many pairs of gloves. Because they rotted, this liquid would rot the gloves. So in the end, I stopped wearing gloves.
I had to go.
So you very sensibly refused to do that. Now it's my firm. I don't have to do this stuff. And then so it's been So we've had a bit of a history,
for sure.
And a very pleasant one.
If it weren't for John, I'd say I wouldn't have. God knows what I would have done. Because I'm definitely one of these. God knows what I'm going to do next. I've just, like I say, fell into, as you do sometimes, isn't it?
What do you think you might have done if you hadn't have got involved with music?
I have no idea. That's just one of them things, isn't it? I mean, working still in a factory, I suppose.
I mean, that's my story as well. I started in a factory and I became a filmmaker because I got made redundant twice. So I thought, I couldn't play an instrument. So I thought, what do I want to do?
What
and
do
the
you
answer
wanna do?
was, I want to
Yeah.
film these bands that I'm watching.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just it. Sort of a hobby can become, you know, you can make a living out of it. But as I say, there's a lot of luck, hell of a lot of luck,
And it's been in the right place.
I started writing zines,
Yeah.
making zines, what you were saying.
Yeah.
Now I'm a writer.
Yeah.
You say it's a lot of luck, it's also a lot of sticking power. But back
Yeah.
then, what other option did we have? There was nothing going on.
Yeah.
No
True.
future. No future.
Yeah, there was that. There's the sort of the other 70s, 77. It was a bleak time for whatever employment and everything else. So I mean, say the punk came around at the right time, didn't it? It was
It was a product of that.
It was So, and as I say, it galvanised a lot of people to doing things.
You were already listening. You were you were already listening to people like the Ramones, sort of the roots of punk in America, or did you pick that up later?
I think I heard like most people, Anarchy in the UK first, and then I thought, what in hell is this noise? And was instantly sort of hooked into it. That's what got me. And then you troll back and see where it came before that. So what influenced that? But as I say, it was a, it was that, wow, this is what I want to do. So
But you played most of the sort of legendary gigs, like Camden. What was the place in Camden?
Dingwalls, and it was. I don't know. It's like England was, like in the sort of very sort of blasé kind of the sort of fan to me. Drop you like a brick and move on to the next thing. So as I say, Europe and America and probably the rest of the world is probably has always been a bigger following. But I mean, it's just.
And the band's still doing.
The band is still going, yes.
With the punk revival.
Well, it's never stopped, has it, really?
Yeah.
So there's been festivals and, as I say, Rebellion, isn't it? So every year, and there's all the other ones. So, it's just another offshoot of music, isn't it?
But there's also the stuff that was sort of, because the Addicts were actually, this international name, it gave rise to a lot of other punk bands in Ipswich, like your brother, Sir Scrub.
Yeah.
What was his band?
Oh, Love Junk.
Love Junk.
Yeah. So I mean, he's produced his own album. It just brought that out. So I mean, he obviously was very, influenced through what I was doing, because it was 11 years difference. So, he says.
But the whole generation of those bands.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Like Red Flag.
Yeah.
Which is still existing very much on the punk scene.
This is it.
Was sort of came out of all that, and the Panorama in Black and those, and there was a lot of bands that were going at the same time, but
they were
it only
much younger, weren't they?
It only happened because of the Addicts.
Yeah. Well, we used to lend them our gear just every year, so a PA and stuff. So we did our bit, for all the other bands, and that's how it was, really. Sort of.
I think this goes back to the do-it-yourself to Barry question of this of what was the essence of punk. Well, it was very much make it work for everybody. And there was nothing precious about the equipment. And I remember, because I probably every band in Ipswich at some point their equipment would get onto my truck. So if there was ever a bit of equipment stolen anywhere, the people would ring me up, and then and then it would appear on my truck with someone else. So I'd take it back to the owner, and then say, well, you got everything back except for the HH head and the head, which was an amplifier. And I said, but we paid for that. I said, well, maybe the 2 wires sticking out the back, rather than the proper plug point, was a clue. And it was stolen, and it's now back with the owner. And I had an arrangement where I drop it back, and no one would know where it came from, but everyone got their equipment back.
So we used to drive vans around, you know, what the vans you had. So so I say the thing went around.
Well, yeah, whatever was there, made it all work.
You done? Yeah. Okay.
Well,
anything else you want to say, Mel?
I don't know.
He wishes he'd never met me.
I think I remember meeting you somewhere. I do remember seeing you somewhere before, so I can't remember. Like I say, faces and
A long time, isn't it?
Yeah. Sort of going around, sort of.
I first saw John when he was playing with you that night. And I saw this hail of gob coming across at him, but it didn't faze him. And I thought that's the most punk rock thing I've ever seen. So when he got off stage, I wanted to talk to him, but he was talking to this guy from NN49PZ, the fanzine, I think it is. And so I thought, oh well, no, I won't get to talk to him. And then 20 years later, through Alistair, we ended up working together. And then 20 years after that, again through Alistair, we reconnected. We decided we'd all do this project together.
Right.
When they were all gobbing at you, did you have a policeman hat?
You did. You had a little plastic policeman's hat.
Did I have a little plastic policeman's hat?
I remember Barry telling me the story before we met him again.
I might well have had a policeman's hat. I don't know plastic policeman's hat.
It's like perched on top of your head. It's like really tiny.
I seem to remember that.
I think I'd forgotten.
Oh my god.
Now, I think it was that gig. You guys wouldn't know because you were on stage, but there was a mini riot going on outside. We weren't allowed to leave because a whole coach load of like casuals had turned up.
Right.
And I was standing by the front door when they turned up. And this bloke with the 2x4 just whacked it against the frame right by my face.
Right.
And the landlord said, all get back in. And they were climbing on the roof. But you guys were just carrying on playing.
Well, that was pretty normal, wasn't it?
Pretty normal, yeah. Oh my god, yeah. The matter of sort of riots and things going on. What do? You know, you just carry on.
Do you think?
Yeah, it sort of reminds us of a sort of very British version of those country and western roadhouses where there was chicken wire in front of the back. They might as well have been chicken wire.
We played in one of them. In Phoenix, Arizona. That was that was like the Blues Brothers, and the bottles being chucked at you, and they're sort of smashing against that was.
Did you play Rawhide 16 times in a row?
No. Oh dear. That's how they liked you. They like you.
Neither make